With the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams from 4, I think that the SEC championship actually means a lot more than it did before. I think there's a misconception out there. So this week, obviously, I'm dealing with misconceptions. I talked about another one with Georgia and the transfer portal earlier in a video earlier this week. I think another one is about the SEC championship and what it actually means for Georgia in terms of getting into the playoff chances to win a national championship. So I want to break that down. I want to break down why I think that what I've seen as the consensus to be wrong and why it actually matters a little bit more. And it adds to the point that college football from now on, and especially the SEC, look, this thing's only gotten harder. Georgia, it's only going to be harder to win. Georgia is in a place to do it, literally physically, when you talk about being in Georgia, being able to recruit the talent, having the high school football talent that there is in Georgia. But Georgia is the place to do it because of the infrastructure that Kirby Smart has brought, and he himself just being probably the best coach in college football now with Nick Saban out of the picture. Ryan Kelly from Dawg Post talking about the SEC championship. Make sure you're checking out our newsletter down below. Free, premium, all those, everything Georgia, right? It's in your inbox every single day if you just give us your email address down below. And thanks to EcoPoly for the koozie. Not alcoholic, actually. Not alcoholic. I wish a little bit. Here's why. Thank you for bearing with me. The SEC championship now is a bid for a bye in the college football playoff. Now it's a playoff game. It's been a playoff game in certain years, even before the college football playoff, right? In 2012, it was a playoff game essentially between Georgia and Alabama, Georgia losing. But now it is a game for the 1 seed I assume the 1 seed with the SEC championship, right? You would imagine that the SEC champion, right, is in contention for that number 1 seed. But those top 4 seeds now, what the top 4 was before, now they get a bye. So when you break down the way that this is going to go, here is how the college football playoff is going to work. I'm going to show up for a second. This is straight from the college football playoff. So this is the schedule. Friday, December 20th. So those first round games are going to happen, and they're going to be earlier in the year. So that's another point to remember that I'm going to bring up here in just a second. But you see how that's going to work. Those quarterfinal games, the top 4 seeds will automatically be put into those quarterfinal games, right? I imagine the way it's going to work is similar to previous years where the number 1 seed and the high seeds, they get to choose kind of where they go. So if let's say Georgia is the number 1 seed in this college football playoff, I believe that they would choose the Peach Bowl. If that is the way that it works, then I think that that's what would happen. But remember those dates, that bye, right? The SEC championship is going to be on December 7th this year. All signs point to Georgia as being one of the 2 teams that's going to get in that thing, right? I think that Texas has a good shot. I think Missouri has a sneaky shot. I think LSU has a shot. I think Alabama has a shot. Outside of that, I don't know. Ole Miss. The rest of it, maybe not. Maybe Tennessee, but I don't think so. That's not my point, though. December 7th is that game. If you don't get that bye, here are the things that could go wrong. Well, let's say Georgia lost 2 games. Let's say Georgia doesn't even make the SEC championship. Or they lose and they're a 2-loss team. And now all of a sudden Georgia is what seed would give them a road game? All of a sudden Georgia's the 10 seed. And they've got to go out to Oregon. They got to go out and play the Ducks over there because Oregon was a 1-loss Big Ten champion. And they ended up as a higher seed. And Georgia ends up as a lower one. A road game as your first playoff game does not sound fun. That is a possibility. So, yes, you can probably straight up miss the SEC championship and still make the 12-team college football playoff. That would have been the case for Ole Miss, I believe, this past season. That would have been the case for Ole Miss. Yes, they would have been number 11. They would have ended up going and playing Georgia. So you can miss the SEC championship, be a 10-2 team, and make the college football playoff. A handful of teams are going to have that opportunity. That's not an advantageous thing, though, because you're probably going on the road for your first college football playoff game, and these are good teams that probably have pretty good environments. Yes, Dawgs travel. Yes, Georgia, I think, is better than what in the context that I'm talking about them in, but that's not something that you want to do if you're a team that's competing for national championship. You don't want to have to go on the road in December. It's going to be cold. Imagine if it was in Columbus or if it was in Wisconsin or something like that, right? I'm just throwing things out there. Or Michigan. That is a total possibility to where it lines up that way and Georgia would have to go and play it. You lose the SEC championship, I kind of think you're going to end up being in that 5 to 8 seed range, and you get a home playoff game, so that's a little bit different. But not making the SEC championship, that's the punishment in a way. You still get a chance at a national championship because you're in the playoff, but you've got to go and play at another team's environment. Moving on to the next point about those dates. Bye week, right? You don't have to play in that December 20 to 21st date range. You get a whole extra, you get a 24 days. You're getting over 3 weeks to prepare for your quarterfinal game. So there's another point there. And that's helpful for the program for multiple reasons. I'm going to talk about mental health for about 30 seconds. There's a lot going on in that December range for students. Now, these football players don't have it the same, but there are finals going on. There's holidays going on. People have relationships and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff going on in December. And it's kind of a distraction. And it's a distraction for the coaches too. That is a huge recruiting month. It is a huge month where they go out and they visit a lot of kids and they're trying to flip people. And if they're preparing for a game that's even sooner than December 31st or January 1st, it's on the 20th or the 21st instead as a turnaround between the SEC championship and that's another negative. So you want to win that SEC championship game. The 4 conference champions are going to be the 1 through 4 seeds, and they're getting this bye week. So that's another thing. On top of that bye, which is more in tune with just what it was when you made it as a top 4 team in the past. Now you're getting that seeding. You get those 3+ weeks off, right? You get players that have an opportunity to rehab. So I do think that it is important to win the SEC championship game. The other part of it, a little bit of choosing in location, right? Having say in that, being the number 1 overall seed. You want me to bring up a BS reason? You get to don the red jerseys if you're the Georgia Bulldogs. Now they've won a national championship and they've won important games in both red and white. But look, I'm just making a minor point there. That was more of a joke. You get to don those red jerseys. I think that there's several reasons why it matters. You want to control your own destiny as much as possible. And you don't want things hanging in the cards. If you're Georgia, you win an SEC championship, you know you're already moving on. You're already a top 8 team instead of a top 12 team. You're already a top 8 team. And then, Excuse me. So if you become a top 8 team, then you don't have to worry about that first round game, those campus games. That's going to be crazy. I'll play devil's advocate for a second in terms of the towns, right? More specifically, college towns versus these cities. And Athens, for example. Imagine a home playoff game in Athens. That would be huge. That would be like Notre Dame 2019. That would be like Tennessee last year. Like just absolutely huge game where the world's watching, and it'd be good for the town. The Athens would make a lot of money off of that. It would be a lot of fun. I mean, Sanford Stadium would be, I imagine it'd be one of the most electric environments you could come up with there. So there's a devil advocate side to it. But no, you don't want to be a road team going up and playing a really good team in their house, and it's a playoff game, and their fans are going crazy, because that's just most likely not going to go well. We're not talking about Georgia going on the road and playing Kentucky. We're not talking about Georgia going on the road and playing Tennessee. Could be. I don't think either of those teams are going to be in this position. And road games are always tough. Look at Missouri in 2022. I was out there. Unfortunately, I was at that game, and it was cold, and it was weird, and Georgia struggled that day, and those things can happen on the road. Road games are different, and road games against really, really good teams don't go very well. So that is my biggest point with it, is if you end up as that like 9 through 12 seed range where you're the one that has to go on the road, it'll be different if they were a 5 to 8 seed and then that first playoff game would be in Athens. That's not the scenario I'm talking about. But still, another scenario at the end of the day, as cool as that would be, you don't really want, because that's an extra football game. That's extra risk of getting injured. A bye week means everything. It's more preparation. It's better on the coaches for the schedule. And you want that guaranteed extra. There's a fewer game you have to play. It's nonsensical that people would think that this is just not a better situation. Winning the SEC championship matters more than it ever has, and that's even with saying Georgia missed out on the playoffs by losing the SEC championship this past year. Yes, I think Georgia probably would have won the national championship, but moving forward with the new rules, I do think there's more significance on this game. Thank you for listening to my rant.